Golden Black Live, we're back after a long hiatus. It seems like about 3 to 4 weeks it's been since we've last been here. I know that all of you have missed us. Brian, I know you've missed doing this show.
More than anything.
More than you can even describe. But welcome back, our fair readers and listeners and viewers, or whatever you want to call yourselves. And Brian, you did make it back from Madison. That was a good thing. You never know on those trips up to Madtown, especially with this weather. What did we learn from the 5-point, or was it 5 or 6 point loss to Wisconsin on Wednesday night?
7.
7. Okay, who's counting?
Not you, obviously.
Yeah, apparently.
I think what we learned is Purdue's back on the uptick here. I think, after those 3 losses to non-conference play, it kind of looked like scorched earth, like this season had gone off the rails completely. But I think, Purdue came back, won 2 important home games to start off Big Ten play, and then represented itself pretty well at Wisconsin. Purdue stacked up well against the best team in the Big Ten, one of the best teams in the country, on that team's home floor. So I think Purdue really is in a pretty good spot right now, but it's a really important game tomorrow against Maryland, a top 10 caliber of team. These are the sorts of games Purdue has to win, to be able to do something this year. Whether that something is finishing in the upper division of the conference, going to the NCAA tournament, even going to the NIT. This is a very important game Saturday for Purdue to build on this momentum they have right now.
So our opening comment on Golden Black Live, how our show works. If you're visiting for the first time, you can chat us or question. Allie and or Gordon will send it to us via instant message. And if it's a good one, we'll use it. And if it's a not so good one, we might use it as well. But also want to thank our sponsors, Triple X, on the hill but on the level, a Purdue tradition since 1929. And of course, John Basham and the folks at Basham Rentals. It's getting near rental season for apartments for students for actually the 2015-16 year, if you can believe that. And State Farm agent Trent Johnson, a big Boilermaker fan, and referee from time to time in high school sports, and also is on the sidelines for Purdue football. And then, of course, Hilton Garden Inn, and once tomorrow is a big day, State HDI tonight. It's interesting that all of our sponsors are literally within about a quarter mile of each other down in West Lafayette, so we appreciate you all very much. I know you were extremely interested in that whole notion.
Perhaps we should take our show to them.
We have done that a time or two.
Have a show at Silver Dipper.
Yeah, there you go. I'm sure that everybody would love that.
What we all want right now is ice cream.
Yeah, no doubt. It has been about as cold as it can get. Okay. All right, now you look at one of the things I thought that was impressive about the game it's a game that kind of, this past Wednesday, that we've kind of seen up in Madison. I mean, it was a game that Purdue has most of the time of late, and the Matt Painter era have hung around and have had opportunities to win at the Kohl Center. It hasn't done it all that often, but it's done it more than a lot of other teams. But what was different down the stretch in terms of what did Purdue not do that it had to do in the last 5 or 6 minutes besides the obvious of just scoring more points?
Well, obviously, from the perspective of looking at the whole game, it's in its entirety, as was kind of the narrative after the game. Purdue simply fouled too much.
Yeah.
A lot of those fouls called on Purdue were fouls. Some of them were 50-50 calls that went against Purdue on the road, as tends to happen. But Purdue just sent Wisconsin to the line far too many times and didn't get a lot of the same calls that I thought went in Wisconsin's favor. And that's not me being blame the refs guy. I think that was pretty apparent. It says something when one team generates so much of its offense in the paint, and this was especially true for Purdue at Wisconsin because they didn't shoot very many threes because Kendall Stevens was in foul trouble, their primary three-point weapon. But Purdue gets 38 points in the paint and only ends up shooting 7 free throws. There's an imbalance there, and I don't know where that imbalance occurred, but Purdue didn't get to the line enough and Wisconsin got to the line too much for Purdue to be successful, to the point they shoot 51% on the road in a very difficult building to play. They out-rebound Wisconsin, and they end up losing. When you just look at the last couple of minutes of the game, Purdue was in position to still have a chance to win that game at the end. I thought there was a jump shot taken by Rafael Davis, not to put this on any one player. I thought there was a jump shot taken. He got kind of baited into. It wasn't his comfort zone offensively. He takes that shot. Purdue was down 2, I believe. Wisconsin gets the rebound, scores, and then Purdue turns it over its next time down. Wisconsin scores again, and that's kind of where things went south on them. I think it went from 2 to 6 after that. It's not all having to do with the shot. There was that ensuing possession, too, where Purdue turned the ball over. But I just think there were a couple of plays Purdue could have made there that could have kept them in it a little bit longer than they actually were in it.
Yeah, Matt Painter said today in his press conference, he talked about the fouling and had some things to say about that in terms of how, not necessarily blaming it on the officials, but just how the game's being reffed and how Purdue has to adjust. I mean, what else did he
Yeah, there were. I mean, Purdue's not the best man-to-man defensive team. As I keep saying over and over again, there was a reason they looked at zone in the summer. It's because there were certain deficiencies there that aren't going away. And sometimes that leads to people getting beat off the dribble every now and then, having to reach, getting called for fouls that don't really impact anything, but are going to get called regardless. I thought there were a couple real soft fouls on Purdue. I think Everett's son picked up a couple of really soft ones early that maybe if Purdue's playing at home, those calls don't get made. Maybe if Purdue's playing on a neutral site, those calls don't get made. But I thought that really changed the game, too, because Kendall Stevens is so important to what they do offensively. When you look at the game he played, he was good in the 12 minutes he played. He was 3 for 6 from the floor, made a tough jump shot, made a 3 there in the second half. Extrapolate maybe those 12 minutes to twice as many minutes. Perhaps it's an entirely different game because maybe he makes 2 more threes in expanded minutes, and that generates some offense where there otherwise was no offense. But we were talking about fouls, I believe. Purdue fouls too much, but I think that they got in kind of a jackpot at Wisconsin where more fouls were called than maybe would have under a lot of other circumstances. And then, the Isaac Haas thing's obviously coming to a head here where he's simply unprecedented. I shouldn't say he's completely unprecedented. I'm sure there's been players like him, but these officials calling these games have never seen anything like him in all likelihood, and they don't know what to do with him. And the same thing happened in high school in that they didn't know what to do with him. And I think, as Matt Painter says over and over again, the stuff that's being called against Haas are fouls. But the things that opponents are doing to him that aren't getting called are fouls too. Now, we can start a whole other debate whether or not it's reasonable to expect officials to call 25 fouls a game on people trying to guard Isaac Haas when he's already drawing per 40 minutes more fouls than all but, I think, 3 other players in the country when you extrapolate things out to full games. But there's a lot of stuff going on in defending Isaac Haas that is going uncalled, and there's a lot of things that he's doing that is getting called. So I just think you kind of worry about a day here where Isaac Haas's greatest advantage becomes his greatest disadvantage too, because the physicality and the aggressiveness he's brought to the floor that have been such important factors for Purdue this season, you worry that those things get watered down some by him being afraid to foul and him being afraid to be physical, because when those elbows get flying, somebody's going to lose their head, and it's going to be a flagrant foul against Purdue, and Purdue can't afford those sorts of things. They have very little margin for error. When things happen, Purdue was right there in the first half with Wisconsin the whole way, and it was the flagrant foul that really got Frank Kaminsky going. The flagrant foul really kind of turned the scoreboard on Purdue, because I think they had a 5-point lead at the time, ended up being down 1 at the half after a foul on a defensive rebound of all things. So it just comes down probably to Isaac Haas doing a little bit of a better job not fouling. Officials maybe doing a better job understanding this is a unique situation. They have to protect him, and Purdue just in general not fouling as much.
Well, you mentioned Everett Stevens. He'll be our guest in the second segment, and we'll look forward to talking to him about all things Purdue basketball, his experience. We will not, I promised him before, we would not make this a referendum on how well Kendall's playing. Kendall's playing just fine, but we obviously will have some interesting conversation with Everett here shortly. Brian, upcoming for Purdue, opportunity or gauntlet, and that fact is that you've got Maryland coming in this week, and then you take to the road. And obviously, this is a one game at a time league. This is a one game at a time team, I think, in Purdue. But you have some opportunity on paper. It just doesn't seem like, maybe outside of Wisconsin, that there's a tremendous disparity between teams 2 through 14. It's not quite that simple, but there are some opportunities for Purdue to really take a step forward here in the next 2 weeks. And I suppose there's a lot of other teams that could say the same thing.
Yeah, I think Maryland's the second best team in the Big Ten right now. But when you look at Purdue's schedule moving forward, you're going to be 4 games into the Big Ten season, and you're not going to have Wisconsin anymore. You're not going to have Maryland anymore, and those are the 2 best teams in the Big Ten as of right now. So seems like a pretty good scheduling break for Purdue and an opportunity to really, trend upward as teams should theoretically be getting better. I think Purdue is getting better. So I kind of like the way for Purdue, the way the schedule kind of unfolds for them. I think there are a lot of moving parts in the Big Ten, a lot of unknowns. I thought Illinois was going to be in trouble without Ravonte Rice, and shows you what I know because they just beat the second best team in the Big Ten on their home floor. I think Michigan State's trending upward if you've watched the way they've played.
They shot the ball so well last
If
game.
you've watched the way they've played three of their last 4 quarters of basketball, they killed Indiana, killed them in East Lansing, and then obviously they were down double digits at Iowa, and then played one of the best halves of basketball I've seen all year by anybody at Iowa last night to beat them. I think Iowa's good. I don't know how good. I think Michigan is going to get better. Who else is in the Big Ten? I can't even remember right now. Winning at Minnesota.
Minnesota, who's lost already 3 games.
They're 0-3 in the Big Ten, but I think they're better than that.
Yeah.
Winning at their place is going to be difficult. Ohio State is pretty solid, but they're really young, so I think you're going to see some inconsistencies there. So I just think the entire Big Ten is kind of a cluster, so to speak, and I think Purdue is trending upward right now, going into an opportunistic portion of its schedule. But as I said before, this is a big game tomorrow.
Question.
If you can get this one, it puts you ahead of a little bit of the way you project games coming out. It would be a quality win in a year when if Purdue has to put together an NCAA tournament resume, if they're in that position here in a couple weeks, you need good wins to offset bad losses because you're dealing with bad losses for the first
2 of
time
those,
in a season. Purdue's had to deal with the NCAA tournament, so this is a big game tomorrow.
No question. Obviously the Boilermakers have a week off after that. They travel to Northwestern on the 17th. That's Saturday. Then come back and play at Illinois on the 21st. But like you said, every game will be an interesting one. Do you get a sense after 2 games, 2 road games? Obviously, not a real good experience up at Vandy, but at Wisconsin, this team has the ability to be a decent road team. And then I know you had something else you wanted to say, but go ahead.
I think it kind of remains to be seen. They played well at Wisconsin, so that's certainly a good thing. But I think you see every now and then teams play over their heads sometimes on the road. Now, Purdue's only played 2 road games, so it's really hard to say that we can draw anything from those 2 games moving forward. But I think Purdue's going to have to show it can be consistent on the road. A lot will depend on the opponents and the matchups, too. It's going to be really important. Keep talking about how important tomorrow is. It's important for Purdue tomorrow to have some success. It's important for Purdue to win road games because we just talked about how Wisconsin and Maryland are off the schedule now. That's a good thing from a competitive standpoint. It's a bad thing from a resume standpoint because now you have very few opportunities to get those quality wins to offset those bad losses from non-conference. So where you're going to have to make up the difference is you're going to have to get the good wins you can get from here on out, and there's not going to be any obvious top 10 teams moving forward, but you're also going to have to probably make things up in your win total. And to do that, you're obviously going to have to defend your home floor, but you're going to have to steal a couple on the road too. And Purdue's going to have to. You always have to play well on the road in the Big Ten to get where you want to go. But I think it's especially important for Purdue this season.
Yeah, okay. We will move on to the next topic, and there hasn't been a whole lot per se on football recruiting. This is just maybe take us through the calendar of what will happen before signing day. Purdue will host some visitors here upcoming once class starts, which Purdue's class starts this Monday the 12th. Any other news? It's been kind of a quiet period to some extent over the last few weeks, but what's the news of the day in football recruiting?
Well, once the dead period, which is going on now, lifts, Purdue will have more official visitors in the weekend of January 16th, and then again the following weekend. So whatever spaces Purdue needs to fill are going to be largely addressed then. If they need any more right before signing day, I'm not sure if they can have one last weekend. You can always bring in midweek visits. That doesn't happen very often. But Purdue's still got to add some offensive linemen. They just added a late mid-year signee, Michael Mendez, as an offensive tackle. I think they want to take at least one more offensive lineman. Defensive line is still a huge priority. So you're going to look at them, bring in some junior college players as defensive linemen. Purdue's got to address tight end. They lost a junior college transfer Their other commitment, Bryson Hopkins, as we'll have in our Boiling Over post here in a little bit, just got offered last night by Florida, which is odd because he went the whole year without another BCS conference offer other than Purdue, and then Florida just up and offers him. So it'll be interesting to see. He might visit down there. He seems respectful of the fact that if he visits another school, that might be perceived as an act of war, so to speak, on his Purdue commitment. So I'm not sure he's going to visit there without making a decision on whether or not he absolutely positively wants to go to Purdue. But if they lose him too, they still have to sign at least 2 tight ends from here on out. So Purdue has to add at least 1 more tight end, maybe 2. Has to add some more defensive linemen, probably some more junior college guys, another wide receiver, maybe another cornerback. So Purdue still got lots of work to do between now and signing day. 2 official weekends at least to do it, and probably a half dozen or so scholarships, maybe a little bit more to fill.
All right, sounds good. All right, well, Brian, we're going to let you get off to go down to Mackey Arena to cover some basketball upcoming. Did you say what you wanted to say? You were tapping
Yeah,
me?
no,
Okay.
I want to make the point about them needing to win some road games here to make up for the bad losses, because you don't have many ranked teams. You don't have many quality win opportunities, for at least the way the Big Ten looks right now. For all we know, the Big Ten could look entirely different next week.
Yeah, especially
But as of
Michigan
right now,
State
that's the way it
starting to wake up a little bit. All right, we'll let Brian head down to Mackey Arena. Like I said, we will bring in Everett Stevens and have a chance to talk with a Boilermaker basketball legend, and we will do that in a couple of minutes on Gold and Black Live.